The spoof film, or the parody film, is a subgenre of comedy that mostly pokes fun at other genres, characters, tropes, or even entire intellectual properties. These films were a staple of American cinema, but now they've basically gone extinct, and that's what we're here to talk about: the origin of the spoof film, the evolution of the spoof film, and eventually the death of the spoof film. To find the first spoof film, you'd have to go all the way back to 1905 with The Little Train Robbery. Now, 2 years before The Little Train Robbery, the short film The Great Train Robbery came out. It is probably the first shootout and action film out there. It's free on YouTube, you should watch it, it's great. But 2 years after that came out The Little Train Robbery, which spoofed it by casting a child actor and replacing all the sets with basically child version of the sets, and that was basically the first spoof film. Now, from there on, there was evolution, but the spoof film didn't really take off. We have films like 1932's The Man Who Was Sherlock Holmes. Now, this film uses the intellectual property and uses the popularity of Sherlock Holmes, but it is very much a thing of its own, and its existence does not hinge on Sherlock Holmes. I mean, you could watch this film without knowing who Sherlock Holmes was and still have a good time. The spoof film then evolved, and we got the iconic Abbott and Costello franchise. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein came out in the late 40s, and it just continued throughout the 50s with films like Boris Karloff, The Invisible Man, Dr. Jekyll, Keystone Cops, and The Mummy. Now, these films, once again, are very reliant on all the characters it's about. They're reliant on Frankenstein, they're reliant on The Invisible Man, they're reliant on The Mummy, but still, if you watch those films without knowing who Frankenstein was, you still have a great time. They're still comedy films that are very much their own thing. They spoof, they parody, but their entire existence does not hinge on the property it is parodying. Now, we go on to the 70s, we have stuff like Blazing Saddles, we have Airplane, which is probably still the quintessential parody films, and once again, with these two, and this is personal experience too, I saw both of these when I was 10 or 11, I had no idea about the genres, the characters, the situations it was spoofing, but there still were great comedy films that I had a good time with. So once again, from The Little Train Robbery, it continued and evolved and became a genre where it wasn't super reliant on the property it was spoofing, because all these films stand on their own, and most of these films were very beloved critically as well and did good at the box office. But the actual boom period and a sort of de-evolution, is that what you call it? De-evolution? Devolve? Yeah, let's say devolved. The spoof film devolved in its actual boom period, and the boom period was the boom period of this spoof film came at the start of the century, at the start of the decade, in 2000 with the film Scary Movie. Now, a few seconds ago I said devolve. Now, when I say devolved, I'm not coming at you with any objective statement like, oh my god, the spoof film has devolved. I'm just saying that 100 years before Scary Movie came out, The Little Train Robbery, which was completely dependent on you knowing what the original was. If you saw that movie on its own, it would not work. But later on, like films like Abbott and Costello, Airplane, Blazing Saddles, all those films work without you knowing whatever it is that they are spoofing. But Scary Movie is very much like The Little Train Robbery, because it too depends on you knowing what it is spoofing. Now, yes, there's scenes, yes, there's bits that are just, universal comedy, but a lot of the scenes, a lot of the gags, a lot of the jokes are fully dependent on you knowing the films they are spoofing. Now, these films were insanely profitable because the first film, made on a budget of $19 million, made $278 million at the box office, and the profits just continued, with the second one making 141, the third one making 220 million, the fourth one making 178 million, and these four came out in the 2000s, which I think is the boom period of the spoof film, and the fifth film is the only Scary Movie to come out in the 2010s and is to date the last Scary Movie, and it made $78 million. Now, that is still a lot of money. It is still profitable considering it was made on a budget of $20 million, but you can see the fall off. It's $100 million less than the fourth film, and it is $200 million less than the first film. You can see the fall off, as I said. Now, the Scary Movie franchise kind of spawned this new type of spoof film, like I said, because Abbott and Costello, all those films I mentioned before from the 50s and from the 70s and from the 80s, were comedy films that used other properties, but they very much were their own thing. Now, with this, studios kind of had a cheat code. They could spend just $20 million and make so much more money from essentially having other people sort of do their job. I mean, of course, writers on this did do their job, and it is difficult to come up with jokes. I'm not saying just because it is spoofing something, it is, without any merit, but essentially, with these films, they were waiting for other studios, for other people to make horror movies that they could spoof. It was a very strange phenomenon, but the Scary Movie franchise ended on sort of a high note, but it left a massive mark on the industry, and probably the two people it influenced the most, or the two people that stood for what Scary Movie started the most, were Aaron Seltzer and Jason Friedberg. Now, you probably have not heard of these two guys, but you probably have heard of their movies, because these guys were responsible for not just one, not just two, not just three, not just four, not just five, but 6 spoof films from 2007 to 2015. Disaster Movie, Epic Movie, Meet the Spartans, Vampire Sucks, Starving Games, and Superfast were all directed by them. Now, I'm willing to bet you guys have heard of the first 4, not so much about the last two, second 4. I'm bad with numbers, man. I just, that was supposed to be an impactful line, and I've messed it all up. God damn. Okay, back on track now. These movies were very much like the Scary Movie franchise in terms of the box office. Now, in terms of quality, I think these movies are horrible, and I think some of the Scary Movie films are good, but good God, these movies are horrible. But when we are talking right now about box office, and on box office, man, it was profitable. Now, not as much as the Scary Movies, but Epic Movie made $87 million, Meet the Spartans made $84 million, and Vampire Sucks made $81 million, all across budgets of $20 or $30 million. Now, it was going all fine, all well. These guys probably thought we can make spoof films for the rest of our lives and be loaded, but then came the Starving Games. Now, the Starving Games is a parody of The Hunger Games, and it cost only $5 million to make, which is very less considering what the other films cost. But even with that rather meek budget, it made only $3.8 million at the box office, being an absolute bomb now. But, these guys probably thought that, hey, it's just a small roadblock, let's do it again, let's parody Fast and Furious. Now, Fast and Furious in 2015 was a very hot property. I mean, it still is. Fast X Sweep, let's go. Back in 2015, there were 6 Fast and Furious films, and the 7th Furious 7 was about to come out. And if you remember, the 7th made $1 billion, probably more than $1 billion, and it was a very hot property. And they thought, let's parody it. There's a lot to make fun of. All those stunts, Vin Diesel, they can probably get a lot out of it, but they had high hopes because they went to $20 million budget again. They went to the big bucks again. They thought, let's give this a budget that Scary Movie had all those years ago. Let's bring it back to its former glory. Let's make $278 million. But they made just $2 million, which is 10% of their budget and about 1% of what Scary Movie made 15 years ago. It was over. With Starving Games and Superfast, these films made barely any money, and altogether it's around a loss of like $21 million. And this was their last film. Superfast was the last film these guys directed or wrote, and for me, this is like one of, if not the final proper spoof film of the boom period, because if you look at Wikipedia or any other website, all the films labeled as spoof after this are not really spoof films. I mean, you've got stuff like Deadpool in there. Like, Deadpool has a narrative of its own. Just because it makes fun of, some genres or tropes like the superhero landing, it's not a spoof film. The type of movies that were made from Scary Movie to Superfast have died. These films that completely existed just to make fun of genres and characters and situations and all that, it died. And it's very much evident that it's dead, because tell me one movie that's like Scary Movie that came out in like the last 7 or 8 years, ever since Superfast came out. There isn't. It's died. There may be one or two that came out, but you cannot look at whatever's coming out at the rest of the year and find anything like these movies. It simply has died. Now, we know that it's dead, but why did it die? That's what I'm here to talk about. This is my big reason for why the spoof film died. Is the internet. Yep. Very original, but hear me out. Scary Movie came out in 2000. Now, the online climate at the time was very different from how it is now. Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Reddit, all these things did not exist. Even at the time Scary Movie 5 came out, the online climate was very different, but it had started changing. And by the time Superfast came out, it still is not what it is today, but it was very different from when Scary Movie came out, and I'm very, very sure that played a huge factor. Because thing is, the entire appeal, the entire basis of Scary Movie, Disaster Movie, all these films, and what the appeal of what Superfast was trying to do was movies that were entirely comprised of dunking on and making fun of and spoofing other films. They were essentially feature-length jokes about other films. Now, that does not work nowadays, and I'm going to explain that with the example of Morbius. Now, Morbius came out in April of 2022 it did open to cash, but it mostly opened to a lot of memes. Morbin time, all the jokes about the box office, all the memes about the horrible, horrible post-credits. It was the joke of the summer. Jared Leto and the entire team of Morbius was ridiculed online for months and months and months. But by the time the December rolled around, imagine if someone came up to you in December and made a Morbius joke. Would you laugh? Because I would not. Most people would not. The joke was over. The trend was over. It was dead. Morbius was nothing but yet another horrible superhero film. Now, let's say the week Morbius came out, the opening weekend, when those horrible opening weekend numbers hit, when all the memes came out, someone instantly got together a team and said, hey, we need to make a Morbius parody film. Even at the most breakneck pace, even if they worked at goddamn Flash's speed, pre-production, production, post-production, marketing, and release would at least take them 6 months, and 6 months would put them at like November and December. Now, go back to what I said about December 2022. If someone told you a Morbius joke in December of last year, you would not laugh. Now imagine if an entire feature-length parody of Morbius came out. Would you pay $20 to go watch it? You would not. I would not. Most people would not, because essentially every single joke in that film would have been made online. We live in a time where things expire so quickly. I mean, right now as I'm recording this, that whole The Good Doctor, the I Am a Surgeon meme is massive, but by the time I put this video out, it might as well be dead. And that's how it is. These films are essentially what we see daily on Twitter. These jokes and memes we see online are essentially what these films were. Now, I'm not saying this to disregard these films or to, just say, oh, they had no merit. These films do have merit, but the jokes that Morbius parody would have had were done online, and that's what I can say for Scary Movie. I can say if Scary Movie came out right now, it would not work, because all the movies that it was making fun of probably would have been made fun of online, and all the jokes would have been very, very similar. And I can say that for Morbius too. If Morbius came out back then, it probably would have a parody. And hell, I forgot to talk about superhero movie. If Morbius came out at that time, it would probably be parodied in the superhero movie, because that's what it is. The culture right now is so much different, and the entire basis of this type of spoof film relied on trends, on memes, on very recent things. A horror movie came out in 1997, they parodied it in 2000, it worked. But now that's not the case. What horror movie came out 3 years ago? It Chapter 2. If a movie came out right now making fun of It Chapter 2, no one would watch it, no one would care about it, no one would talk about it, and that's just how it is. The online culture has affected film a lot in a lot of ways, and this is one of them. I mean, this is it. Every day you're on Twitter and you see those memes about the whale, or you see those jokes about Ant-Man 3, you're kind of watching a spoof film, because that's what it is now. We're daily at the spoof film's funeral. Every time you make a joke about a movie, you're at the funeral of the spoof film. That's just how it is. And yeah, I mean, what a legacy it has left behind. I mean, Superfast, that's my favorite movie of all time. I'm gonna watch Superfast before I watch Fast X for the true experience. But yeah, anyways, that was the video, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank God I'm actually doing this. I've been procrastinating having a YouTube channel for so long, and I mean, because right now I'm recording this, I hope it's edited and I hope it's out soon and I can start working on my second video. And yeah, I mean, all my socials are down in the link. My Instagram. Big shout out to my big shout out to my friend Adil does movies for the thumbnail. He is the GOAT. He's been my friend for years. He has a YouTube channel too. I'm gonna link that too. Go subscribe to Adil. He is fucking fantastic. I love that guy. And yeah, I mean, I'm gonna see you in the next video, hopefully, if I make it. I hope I make it. And yeah, hopefully the second one is better than this one, and every video I make is better than the last, because that is the way to progress. Is that a good line to end the video? I don't know how to end the video. I've been procrastinating ending this video. I made a whole script, but I didn't make a script for the outro, and now I have no idea how to sign off. What do people say? I don't know. Bye. Thank you for watching. I've said that already. Bye. Bye. Bye.